The night I walked into my late brother's wife's birthday party, my hands were shaking in a way they hadn't since the day we buried him. Because grief has a strange memory, and it wakes up when you least expect it. Especially when you step back into a house that once held laughter, arguments, shared meals, and a love story that ended too soon. The balloons looked cheerful. The cake smelled like vanilla and nostalgia, and yet every step forward felt like I was crossing an invisible line I had promised myself I would never cross. I told myself I was only there to honor my brother, to show respect, to prove that time had not erased loyalty. But deep down, I knew this evening would test parts of me I had kept locked away for years. If you believe in kindness, second chances, and the quiet ways love can heal broken hearts, take a moment right now to like this video, share it with someone who needs hope, leave a comment, and subscribe to the channel, because stories like this are meant to remind us that life doesn't end where pain begins. My name is Matthew, and my older brother Andrew was my hero long before he was gone. He taught me how to throw a baseball, how to change a tire, and how to be patient when the world felt unfair. When he married Sarah, she didn't just become his wife. She became part of our family in a way that felt natural and permanent, like she had always been there. She laughed easily, listened deeply, and had a way of making ordinary days feel meaningful. When Andrew passed away in a car accident on a rainy highway in Ohio, it felt like the ground beneath our family cracked open, and nothing ever sat right again. I watched Sarah become a widow before she had even turned 30, and I watched myself become someone who avoided mirrors because they reminded me of my brother's face. For years after the funeral, I kept my distance, not because I didn't care, but because caring hurt too much. I sent birthday cards, holiday messages, and polite check-ins, always careful to keep my words safe and neutral. I moved to a different state for work, buried myself in long hours and short relationships, and convinced myself that staying busy was the same as healing. But when Sarah invited me to her birthday this year, something inside me said it was time to stop hiding. The party was being held at her home in a quiet neighborhood in Pennsylvania, a place Andrew and she had once planned to grow old together. Walking up the driveway felt like stepping into a memory that still breathed. Inside, friends and family gathered, smiling and talking, pretending that time had smoothed the sharp edges of loss. I hugged people I hadn't seen in years, accepted a drink I barely tasted, and tried not to look at the framed photos on the wall. Sarah looked different. Not in the way grief changes a person, but in the way strength slowly rebuilds them. There was a softness in her eyes that hadn't disappeared, only matured, and a steadiness in her posture that spoke of survival. Watching her move through the room, thanking guests and laughing politely, I felt proud of her in a way that surprised me, and then guilty for feeling anything at all. As the evening went on, the noise faded into the background, and I found myself thinking about Andrew more than I had in a long time. I remembered how he used to tease me for being too cautious, too afraid to risk my heart. I wondered what he would say if he could see us now, standing in the same room, carrying the same loss in different ways. The cake was cut, candles blown out, and applause filled the house. But there was a moment when Sarah looked at me across the room, and everything else seemed to pause. It wasn't dramatic or obvious, just a quiet recognition that we were both still here, still breathing, still trying. Later, when the party thinned out and the house grew quieter, we ended up talking in the kitchen, not about the past at first, but about ordinary things like work, weather, and how fast time moves when you're not paying attention. Being alone with her felt strange and familiar at the same time, like revisiting a place you once knew well but hadn't seen in years. I noticed how comfortable the silence was, how it didn't demand explanations or apologies. It was in that calm space that something shifted, something honest and fragile, and Sarah shared feelings she had carried quietly for a long time, feelings that caught me off guard not because they existed, but because they had waited so patiently. Hearing that she had cared for me beyond family ties stirred a storm inside my chest. My first instinct was to retreat, to protect the memory of my brother, to guard against judgment, my own and others. I wrestled with guilt that felt heavy and confusing, wondering if love could ever grow from such a place without dishonoring the past. I thought about loyalty, about boundaries, about the unspoken rules we create when tragedy strikes. But I also thought about loneliness, about the long nights Sarah had endured alone, and the years I had spent running from anything that asked me to feel deeply. The days after the party were filled with reflection. I went back to my routine, but nothing felt routine anymore. I found myself remembering small moments, Andrew's laugh, Sarah's kindness, the way life had intertwined us in ways none of us had planned. I realized that grief doesn't freeze love in time. It changes it, reshapes it, sometimes opening doors you never expected to see. I began to understand that honoring my brother didn't mean denying the future, and respecting his memory didn't require living in permanent sorrow. When I returned to Pennsylvania weeks later, it wasn't with answers, but with honesty. We took things slowly, carefully, allowing space for memories and emotions to coexist. There was no rush, no grand declarations, only mutual respect and a shared understanding that life is fragile and time is precious. I felt Andrew's presence not as a barrier, but as a reminder to live fully, to love bravely, and to choose compassion over fear. If this story has touched your heart, if it has reminded you of someone you've lost or a chance you're afraid to take, please pause for a moment near the end and like the video, share it, and leave a heartfelt comment, because your support helps stories like this reach others who need comfort and hope. As the seasons changed, so did we. What began as a complicated conversation grew into something gentle and meaningful, rooted in shared history, but reaching toward a new beginning. We learned that love doesn't replace what was lost. It adds to it, weaving new threads into an already rich tapestry of memories. Standing on the porch one evening, watching the sun dip below the trees, I felt a peace I hadn't known in years. A quiet assurance that healing doesn't mean forgetting, and moving forward doesn't mean leaving anyone behind. Before this story ends, I have one special request for you. Please comment below and share your thoughts, your experiences, or simply a word of encouragement, because your voice matters more than you know. In the end, attending my late brother's wife's birthday party became more than an obligation or a test of courage. It became a turning point, a reminder that life continues to offer grace even after unimaginable loss. I learned that love can grow in the shadow of grief without disrespecting it, and that sometimes the most unexpected paths lead us back to ourselves. And as I carry my brother's memory with me, I do so with gratitude, knowing that he taught me one final lesson: to live honestly, to love deeply, and to never be afraid of hope, even when it arrives in the most surprising way.